when there is an earthquake or a tsunami and people die, did these people attract that, or is this a natural thing that was going to happen anyhow and they just happened to be there? How?
If you'll think of creation, you create your own reality, as attraction, if you'll think of it as cooperative components aligning. We had a conversation earlier with a friend who said, I got into the vortex and then my job went away. So she became cooperative to her joy and not cooperative to her discomfort. And when she was cooperative to her joy, then things that didn't match that couldn't stay around her. So if you think of rendezvousing, in other words, it's much easier to understand creation. That's why we talk about this vortex as this swirling environment where law of attraction assembles all cooperative components. So when you begin to look at anything that happens and you study it enough to get inside it enough to understand the attitude and the feeling of the majority of those who were having the experience, then you begin to understand why some people showed up in the Twin Towers on that day and some didn't. Why some went someplace else and some showed up. Why some end up on the airplane and some don't. Why some gravitate to a particular part of the world and some don't. In other words...
So the earthquake in Haiti, did these people attract that?
The answer to that has to be they rendezvoused with the manifestation that occurred because the vibration of their being matched it. And there is never an exception to that. And then people who are outside the vortex, who are trying to wrap their thoughts around what we are teaching here, then they proclaim, well, Abraham, you're blaming the victim. And we say, we are not blaming anyone, and we are not even identifying a victim. We are trying to free everyone to their own creation. In other words, we are trying to free the victim, so to speak, and help anyone or everyone understand that when you care about how you feel, and therefore you train your vibration to one that feels the best that it can feel, you can't be at what you personally would consider to be the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, there's another really big part of this, and that is you, just like you don't get to choose what sexual orientation anyone else has, you don't get to choose when the right time for them to make their transition is either. And you don't get to decide whether it was something that was in vibrational alignment with the larger part of them or not. In other words, you can't know what matches for anybody else. You can only know for yourself. And that's what makes these questions so interesting or so hard to understand the answers to. You would say, well, from my joy of life and from my understanding of what life is about, I don't want to be someplace where I'm taken out by a tsunami or by an earthquake. And we say, and from the vibrational nature that you've got going on, it's not in your vibrational escrow that would happen to you when you tune to the vibration of who you are, you see. But you just can't decide what was the right manifestation for other people. It is helpful when you say whatever the manifestation is matches the vibration. And you can't know whether the vibration was being offered because they were outside the vortex or because they were inside the vortex. That's the thing that is so interesting about the death experience. Some people make their transition because they are so in sync with the vortex that it's just the next logical step. Some make their transition because they are so out of sync with their vortex that the contradiction or the discord between who they're allowing themselves to be and who they are really being is so huge that their physical experience can no longer sustain them. But the reason their physical experience can no longer sustain them, stay with us, you're really going to like this, is because when you really know what you don't want, you've really asked for what you do want. And so anytime someone goes out in tragedy, what it always means is the asking of their life, of knowing what they don't want, caused them to ask for what they do want in such a significant way that it took something like that to bring it about. Did that make sense to you? from the moment that we began expressing in this format, the questions that would come forth would be, well, what about the little ones? And what about the suffering? As if we were not understanding, or as if they were not understanding, that suffering is not the way that humans are punished, and death is not a punishment. Everything is about well-being being dominant, and humans, all that is, being called into the well-being through the path of least resistance. And sometimes, for some people, in large groups or individuals, the stakes of their life become such, because of the struggle that they've lived, that the path of least resistance to the joy that they have been asking for, fervently asking for, is through what is called the death experience. So, we know this is not an easy discussion to wrap your thoughts around. Earlier, as Esther would hear us speak like this, she would say, don't want to get too happy because I don't want to die. I don't want to be a perfect vibrational match to non-physical energy. I'll just hang around on the ornery edge. Still doing my work. Still putting more stuff in the vortex, you see. But some people have given up. There are people no longer putting anything in the vortex. They are despondent and no longer asking. And there are others that are asking but not going, and asking and 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 not going, until the asking is just the strongest vibration they've got going on, and then they go into the vortex, you see. So it's important. You got to get your thoughts wrapped around what death really is. And death is not what humans make it out to be. Death is relief and release from resistance. And there is no such thing as death in an ending form. It's just the releasing into more life. And the exhilaration. It's an interesting thing. If people would allow it, they could go to the site like Haiti, where there were so many people, more than they have identified, who have made their transition. And in that exhilaration that those souls are feeling, in the newfound freedom of releasing the bondage and resistance of their experience, it could be the most glorious destination, vacation site on the planet if you were tuned to the vibration of well-being. But if you go looking for the devastation, you deprive yourself. In other words, any of you have had anybody croak? Anybody know anybody that croaked lately? Haven't you felt the energy of well-being that surrounded the celebration of the death? In other words, there's a party going on big time in non-physical. In other words, you should feel what it feels like to someone who's been resisting their well-being for a while, who in one fell swoop lets go of all resistance and moves suddenly into this energy of who they are, suddenly knowing their value and knowing their worthiness and knowing the very beingness of existence, knowing what true love is, knowing the fullness of all of that, and being able to look into the physical experience and know the value of every bit of that. Oh, what a non-physical party we're having. But most people don't even allow themselves even a smidgen of that energy that always surrounds the death experience. And so then imagine what it must be around a death experience. There is energy flowing as all of those people are, for the first time in maybe their whole life, allowing themselves to really be who they are, you see. And so it's hard for us to call that a tragedy. It's hard for us to call any death a tragedy, you see. And only those outside the vortex do, really. You are never guarded about death from inside the vortex. Because you really want to know? When you're in the vortex, you are dead. In the sense that you are resistant free. And that's the best definition of non-physical that we could give. Resistant free. When you're in the vortex, you don't have that physical, resistant, hanging back, cumbersome, human energy. When you're in the vortex, you're as close to dead as it gets. Sweet. 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 But it's hard for you to be in this physical world because you talk like that out in the world, they'll point at you. So don't talk like that out in the world. Tell no one. Just be happy anyway. Just be happy anyway. Don't let every single thing that every single person thinks should be the reason that you should sacrifice your joy. Don't let them do that to you. Take a stand. Take a stand inside the vortex. Say to yourself, I'm not going there with you. I'm not going there with you. I am not going to suffer over Haiti. I am not going to suffer over Haiti. Because it's not going to bring anybody back. It's not going to help one thing. I am not going to suffer over Haiti. Instead, I'm going to let the suffering that I already did, because I couldn't help it. I'm going to let the suffering that I already did, which put so much into my vortex, I'm going to see them as the other side of that wave. I'm going to see them as more joyful. I'm going to see them as taking more control of their experience. I'm going to see them basking in the deliciousness of more people's attention. I'm going to see, in my mind's eye, the attention lasting longer than just what is politically or popularly correct. I'm going to see this as a new beginning for these people. I'm going to see them understanding that there are many people from all around the world who do care about them. I'm going to see this as a progressive new beginning for them. I'm going to see them as stepping into this century in new ways, as new aid and new attention and new things flows to them. I am not going to suffer. I'm going to be solution-oriented about it. I'm not going to be problem-oriented about it. Not again. Not me. Not now. And then you get in on the true celebration. Then you get in on the celebration of those who made their transition, who then understand the value of what they lived, you see. You don't come forth to fix a world that is broken. This world is not broken. You come forth because you are a creator, and it is fun to create. And if it's not fun, then you are not the creator that you came forth to be, you see. You came to experience contrast. Yes, you did. Knowing that when you take that step one, which causes you to ask, that source will wrap itself completely around the solution that you've asked for and hold a never-ending signal that you can tune into anytime you want, and that you can feel through your emotions whether you're tuned into the solution or not. And when you care about how you feel and you take that step 3, which is the allowing step, and you come into alignment with what you have asked for, and you take that expansion, you feel as glorious in the expansion as the source within you did when you first gave that expansion to the source within you. And anything less than that is sort of squandering life. You didn't come forth to spend all of your time in step 1. You did not come to make a career out of suffering or step 1. You did not come to struggle your way into your expansion. You came forth to choose your way. You came forth to feel the variety into expansion, but you came to focus yourself. What you said you would do, I'll go forth and I'll see variety and I'll choose what feels best, and then I'll see more variety and I'll choose what feels best, and I'll see more variety and I'll choose what feels best, and in doing so I will live a joyful life as I help in the expansion of the universe. Not one of you said, I'll go forth and suffer my way. I'll suffer. I'll really put good stuff in the escrow for others. I'll deprive myself of it, but I'll put good stuff in the escrow for others. Not one of you said that, you say. Good.
Thank you.